But let's launch into Commanders-Cowboys, 2 days out from kickoff with the news of the day. And it's pretty simple. They've already ruled out Terry McLaurin. Today, Dan Quinn, speaking with reporters, opining about the fact that this injury has lingered longer than they thought. This is one of those soft tissue injuries that won't go away. So I won't editorialize. I'm just going to present some facts. The guy that for 6 years missed 3 football games, doing everything correctly and working his tail off all offseason, getting ready for the years, that resulted in him being on the field and being prolific, has now missed 4 consecutive games after a summer in which he held out and didn't participate in almost anything until the days before the season began with a week and a half left to ramp up. And this injury won't go away.
Right.
It continues to linger. And Dan Quinn, everyone's debated, is it soft tissue? Is it not? Is it a hip flexor? What is it? He used the word soft tissue today. He said, yeah, when you have these soft tissue injuries, sometimes it can be complicated for a speed guy. This was the fear. And boy, does it keep rearing its head. It gets worse and worse, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. I mean, the avalanche is now coming down the mountain. Now, again, we'll never know if that injury would have happened regardless, right? He's diving for a touchdown. Should have been a touchdown, by the way. He was robbed. But, you know, a defender's behind him pulling. I've seen injuries happen a million different ways. So CeeDee Lamb was injured. He was at off-season stuff for the most part, but that was an ankle. I mean, the point is, you'll never definitively know, and you can't slam the gavel. There is a correlation. There is a, hey, this is what's at risk. This is what's at stake. When you cross from off-season to regular season, that's not necessarily in terms of games, but the calendar that is necessary to ramp up. He missed that point where, I mean, for me, my evaluation, not that I'm an expert on it, but I said, hey, you were robbing yourself of the ability to get off to a good start this year, and therefore the team having a great offensive start to the season. And that's what's come to pass. The ultimate fear is one of these kind of injuries taking place and then having it nag, and then all of a sudden, you're not talking about the beginning of the season, you're talking about a season. We're now on track for one of those, oh, well, just sort of, wash it away, pretend it never happened kind of years, where if he does come back, if and when, it's nagging, he's not the same, he never has his sea legs underneath him, never gets going, never has the kind of campaign that you're, frankly, paying for. This is what's on the table now, because we're going to get into week 7. You think he's just magically coming back next week after he can barely jog around this week? Who knows? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But we are at the point now where we're nearing the halfway mark, and he has simply, A, not been himself for a couple weeks, and then not been available for the rest.
Yeah, I'll assume he plays next week because he was supposed to have played this week, and they thought there was a chance he could play last week. And while that might be reason to think, then you don't know, maybe he won't play next week either. I just assume he's getting closer at a snail's pace, at this glacial pace, and that he will be ready for next week. I'm also of the belief, just based on some of the things that tea leaves to be read and conversations I've had, maybe there's just a little bit of like an uneasiness mentally. Think about Chase Young coming back from injury a few years ago where the team is going, hey, man, you can hit the gas pedal. We promise it's going to be okay. And he was kind of hesitant on the knee. I think there's some of that with Terry. He hasn't really dealt with injuries like this. And, ramping it up and getting back to full speed is not something he's had to really overcome or worry about for many, many years. So there might be some of that, too, where I think the team, when you heard Dan Quinn a week ago Monday say there was optimism that he could play against the Bears in the game that came days ago, that didn't happen. It's not like they have seen setbacks. It's not like he's gotten more hurt since, or even that they were that wrong. I think they were hopeful that he could do more. It didn't happen. Then this week, they were pretty sure, okay, he's going to practice. We'll get to a point by the end of the week where ideally he can play. And Dan Quinn even acknowledged that in the presser today. He was asked about it. The question was something to the effect of, hey, you thought he was going to be able to go? And he said, yeah. Let's listen to part of what we heard today from Quinn, John Keim asking the question here of ESPN.
At one point, you thought he was going to practice more this week, and then you did. Was it a workout with him? What happened there? What aren't you guys seeing with him?
Yeah, and it's frustrating for him because he's working at it hard, and with an injury like this, this is a speed player, and so on movements where you're jogging or not, fully there, it's just not ready yet, and that sometimes happens, when you have a soft tissue injury and you're wanting to get there, but you have to push it at the top speeds. And so sometimes, John, that's acceleration. Sometimes it's decel, how hard you have to plant and turn. So, like I said, he's working at hard. He's frustrated, but we're closer. as we've been going week to week, it can be difficult on a injury that you have to test and push at high speed, and you need volume at it, you need reps at it, and it's good to see him running routes and doing that. But once we kind of got to that space, we're just not all the way there yet.
Not all the way there yet. I mean, if this was the second or even the third week of this, that audio would be way less annoying. But here we are. It's the Cowboys. In a lot of ways, it's a season definer. This is a pendulum swinger. You're either going to be 4-3 and be in a really good spot in the NFC East, or you're going to be 3-4 going into a gauntlet, the toughest 3 games on your schedule in succession, and you're going to be on the precipice of this year going completely sideways.
Yeah, we talk about this all the time, and this is one of my, sort of sports truisms or axioms that I'm governed by. The worst thing you can do is not meet expectations. And your job as an organization, in many ways, is to properly set those expectations. So here's the translation. Here's how it matters in the real world. If and when the Wizards win 20 games this year, nobody's going to be disappointed. You might be annoyed. You might be frustrated that this rebuild's taken too long, and that's your right. It's your fandom. But they are not setting the expectation that we are a playoff team. We're winning 50 games for the first time since Danny was in diapers. We're doing this. And then they fall short of it. When you set an expectation of he's coming back, he's on his way. Had he gone on IR, we went over that a lot yesterday, but had he gone on IR in the middle of that first week going, you know what, this thing's going to take a while, we would have been frustrated that day, but the news would move on, and we would talk about how do you beat the Chargers without him? How do you beat the Falcons? How do you beat this team, that team? You would have moved on. And the fact that it's dangled, we talked about this with the potential for the name change as well. Like when Josh Harris would sort of like leave little nuggets and little trails, little breadcrumbs. Well, maybe if it's true, they might get rid of the terrible Snyder name. You kept giving us a little bit of hope, and that's why ultimately it was that conversation continued. The fact that it was ramped up and it seemed like it was happening, and now it's not. And now Deebo Samuel's heel is aggravating, and he doesn't feel very good, and he doesn't look very good at practice. All of a sudden, this receiver position, where they're spending a pretty good amount of cap space, is in shambles.
Yeah, they're the number 8 spending team at wide receiver in the league. It's why I've pushed back this week and haven't really agreed with the discourse that they didn't do enough at wide receiver. You paid Deebo Samuel a bunch of money to come in here, maybe the biggest outside your organization splash any team made at the position, and then you paid Terry McLaurin on an extension, keeping him around through at least the end of next season. There's obviously more years after that. To get out of his contract after next year would be $18 million spread out over 3 years at $6 million per probably. But that's a discussion for another day, and hopefully a year from now, the dialogue on Terry has changed as well. But here's what I know. We're about halfway through, to your point, this season. And so let's go best case scenario. McLaurin comes back next week, has a big game, and the second half of the year he has a legitimate run where he looks like the old Terry. You're still talking about a season where you're about half as productive as normal. Because remember, in the 3 games that he played to start this year, he had the lowest catch total he'd ever had through 3 games.
Yep.
He had the lowest yardage total that we've seen him have, and I think that's based on the fact that the offense wasn't going through him to the extent that it used to because they were going through Deebo, who was effectively their number 1. He's not a traditional receiver. He was the number 1 weapon. They designed their offense kind of in his image. And so you had the 3 not that productive games where McLaurin had the 1 big catch basically where he got hurt. That was the 1 play that was kind of not a Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane could have made that one type play. But I say all this to say, it's not like it's 3-4 weeks in. We're now, the first half of the season got redshirted. So the fear was, what if we get halfway through the year and like Terry McLaurin hasn't really done much because he's dealing with something or he just wasn't that productive or he got off to a slow start. And you get shouted down like, oh, that's not going to happen. That's the worst case, sum of all fears. It happened.
It's literally happening.
We're here. And simultaneously, if the team was 4-2 or 5-1 or something, then who cares? You got Deebo, you're making plays on offense, but they're desperate for a playmaker, especially this week, because of what you just said with Deebo Samuel, who we should get into. So I think this is the bigger story to me. Obviously, Terry's going to sell the papers because everyone's got the 17 jerseys, and the summer was must-see. Stare down McLaurin, and Buddy Baker's name became prevalent in every Commander's conversation. No one should even know his name, versus Adam Peters in Washington. So we're going to talk about McLaurin and how this thing's still unfolding as a result to the summer. But Deebo Samuel is the guy that makes this offense work. And against the Bears, he was a shell of himself physically. Go back and watch. He just wasn't as explosive. The twitch, the burst, all the stuff he had all year long. This is what he did in San Francisco, was he would have these great stretches, but then there would be games, Danny, where he played.
Yep.
He doesn't really miss games, but where he plays through pain, and he is not the Deebo that scares opponents. That's what you got on Monday night. And now on a short week, he has not practiced in full once again. Not practicing matters. Cliff Kingsbury acknowledged part of the problem right now is that they can't ever go through a few practices in a row with their full allotment of guys. And today, again, no Deebo. And the video that Nikki Javala put out, who covers the team for The Athletic, if you haven't seen it, I retweeted it at Grant H. Paulson if you just want to see the quick clip. It's a few seconds. I'm always kind of hesitant to judge a lot off of a quick practice clip because you don't know, was he going full speed or what? But he is laboring through a little route, kind of jogging through. And you could say, well, he wasn't trying to run explosively. Maybe, but then that in and of itself would be a story to me on a Friday that that's the speed he's going at. But he does not look anything like Deebo from a month ago.
Right.
And so I guess my point is, there's a real chance he doesn't play this weekend.
Or even if he does, he's as limited or compromised as he was this past week, or those million instances in San Francisco. For anyone that's ever had him on fantasy knows, where like, wait a minute, he's active. What happened? 1 target for 6 yards and no carries, and he's sitting on the sideline most of the time. That looks like we're doing right now. This heel is not going anywhere on a shorter week with some travel. He discussed it himself, talking that it's aggravating. He is clearly not himself in the moment. Either he plays and is limited, which is not a great thing, or he's inactive, which is not a great thing either.